How you doing? Just an update on things are going. Thought I'd start in the filter house. First of all, I mentioned a few videos back that because I have, I'll just turn off before we open, I can show you a gutter flush option on my, and it comes in this pipe here and around on a hose, and there's one of these jets or something similar in the back of the gutter that I've since found out that it's set to every 10 washes it flushes the gutter. It was an option, it wasn't hugely expensive when I was buying, so I decided to get it. Whether it is actually needed or useful is a whole other debate. You can see that's the pump in the corner there of the bio chamber. It has two outlets. One goes across the jets to clean the drum. I hope this doesn't go off. It's not far off it. And there is a solenoid there that's controlled by the control box at every time. Now, why they just couldn't have another jet on the end of the system flushing every wash, I don't know. It seems a bit over-engineered, but anyway. So, if you watched any of Steve Wainwright's videos, you would have seen the inside of his control box, and it has relays. Mine actually has a Siemens Logo 8, which is a fancy programmable on-off switch essentially. And it has a screen on it, and it allows me change certain settings for the pump. I also installed an IP over power line, because in theory and according to DVS's manual, I should have been able to view and change settings through the browser on my PC, because the logo will be collected to the internet. However, when I went to set up the Logo 8 and do the basic thing like change the language from Dutch to English, it wouldn't let me. So I got on to Patrick directly in DVS, very helpful guy. I think Steve Wainwright just had to say, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Steve has already said it, Quenicois filters are rebranded DVS. So DVS Filter Technique in Dutch there in the Netherlands are the manufacturers of Quenicois filters. I don't know if that's a hugely hidden secret in the hobby, but they are. I had made the decision when looking at my filter, doing a fair bit of research, that Quenicoi were about the best value for money. There are definitely others out there, but I opted for the Quenicoi version because I'm based in Ireland and with Brexit, guys, and I was buying in February. I didn't go with Quenicoi because it was too complicated with shipping, with customs, with potential VAT. Tried to get questions answered about what the impact was, couldn't get the questions answered, so eventually decided to purchase on mainland Europe. Hence mine is DVS branded and has European sockets in here, which is fine because the plug for the cleaning pump and the ponds or the filter motor are European plugs anyway. I just needed an adapter for my pond pump. Mine is branded DVS. So with this option anyway, to get back, I got the Logo 8. There was a problem with it and it didn't allow me change any of the settings. So I got on to Patrick, he said, checked at his end, he says, yeah, there seems to be a problem. We need to do a code change. I got back. It didn't matter. The filter was still working perfectly, by the way. I just couldn't get into the settings on it. So Patrick Julie did send me the update. I plugged it in. It's a little card. It's one of these things plugs into it. I had it here somewhere. Can't remember. Oh, there. One of these little what is it? A micro SD card. I don't know if that focuses on it, doesn't matter, take my word for it, like you'd see in a phone or a tablet. Put it in and Julia did work, allowed me change the language, but I couldn't connect to my network. So I got on to Patrick again, and Patrick said, yeah, sorry, we made a change for model year 2021 and we don't support the connection anymore. They have some irrigation system. If you look at DVS's, that's their website there. It's a fancy, and I think I saw it was an option last year as well, a very expensive option. Looks great, and it has a phone app and all sorts of things to control, and all various stats and the options for pH and temperature probes and all sorts of things. But I think you're talking 1,000 plus for the option, whereas this Logo 8, and I think the flushing thing was only, I think, worked out about €300, if not even. Anyway, so the upshot is, what I'll do is, on a future video, is I'll open this up. It's a bit of a collab. I have to turn off the filter, and I'll show you the Logo 8 and some of the settings are in it, just out of interest. I think there's one other filter, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but a couple of other people remarked before, yeah, my filter has one of those as well. So it's not only DVS who uses them, but I'll go through that again. The other thing that I've been playing around with and I've noticed is the flow rate. For the last, I don't know how many months, I've had my filters, my pumps rather, set to turn over the pond about 15,000 litres out of 22,000 litres an hour. What I did notice when doing my vac every couple of weeks was that there was debris in the bottom of the pond. And it was like a dusty algae type stuff, but I was kind of surprised that that didn't go into the bottom drain. So what I've done over the last couple of weeks is, between the two pumps, I don't have the back one running at the minute, I'm filling up the back because I did my bi-weekly bottom drain flush. I've upped it to turn over the water about 20,000 litres an hour or so. Between the two, there's probably more on the back for the waterfall at the minute than there is at the front, but not that that really matters. So that definitely has the pond floor a lot cleaner, which I'm happier about, which is great. The other thing I've noticed as well is, and it's probably a good problem because a lot of people complain the opposite, I have a lot of pull on the skimmer, and I even notice when I feed the fish, within 10 seconds of feeding the fish at the window, and we'll go out there in a minute, the food is heading for the skimmer. So there's a lot of pull, and I'm just wondering if there's a bit too much pull and it's at the expense of one or both of the bottom drains. So I notice as well, doing my flush, there's a wash going on now. I think it's that going on after the bottom drain flush. If you can hear me over that, stops in 10 seconds. What I did notice was one of my bottom drains, and I'm not too sure which is which, and I should, but it's the far one here. When I flushed it, normally I get a fair bit of bits of algae and stuff, and it's quite small debris. Flush it in here 3 times, vac it out each time, and flush it into an empty, dirty side. I noticed that the one on the far side, there was a fair bit of chunky debris. It was either fish or food waste. I flushed it out 5 or 6 times now, and it did get well clean. And then I ran the bottom pump. The bottom part is only running at the minute, it's at 100%, that pump, which is 20,000 litres. Ran it with just that bottom drain open, and I did get another bit of debris out of it. So what I've done is, as an experiment, I've closed down, the middle one is definitely my skimmer. I've closed that down a bit and see if that helps. I have both bottom drains open just to make sure that I'm getting enough pull to the bottom drains, especially that far one. I'm worried there's a build up of silt. So that's that. I know some of you will argue the way I do my bottom drain flushes is not ideal. That's the way I've opted at the minute. It does seem to work. I did get a fair bit of crud out of it. As I say, my pipes are at the back. They're not concreted in. If I do decide I want to put a spur off both bottom drains directly into the drain for flushing, I do have that option in the future, but I'm working with this as is at the moment. So that's kind of the update. I'll just remember to turn on this. the UV. Every time I open up the lid, I invariably forget to turn it on. So that's the filter house. If we just head outside, there's Tarzan. Everything ground in the ponds. As I say, I'm just looking in. You can't see it there now, but you can generally see a fair ripple. There's a fair pull there on the skimmer. I mean, it's really just keeping the water clear. If I start getting a build up, I'll open up a bit more and see. It may not make any difference, but anyway. Other thing I've noticed is that this damp patch that's on the wall, and initially I felt, and maybe it still could be, it's a window leak, but I did a bit of an experiment during the week, and if I notice of anything, since I modified the skimmer and raised the water level a bit, it's actually got slightly worse. And one thing I do notice is, especially when somebody walks out the door, it appears the fish are hungry. There is a bit of crap floating around in there because I'm after vacuuming and scrubbing and various things. They do splash, and water, as you can see there, splashes on. It dries up on the cappings fairly quickly, but it does run down the window into a gap down here. It's not very wide, but there is water down there. If I stick a bit, what I did during the week was I got a few bits of kitchen roll and just stuck them down the back and wicked out the water. And I found I got one piece of kitchen roll completely soaked, was able to wring it out, but put a dry piece in again. But it didn't wick up completely, that the second piece got completely soaked. So what I feel is happening is, because the way the pond is fiberglassed, I've got a metal frame for the window, so I bricked, metal frame screwed in, then it was fiberglassed over, so the fiberglass comes up over the frame and up to about here, and it's flow coated over. And then put the glass in, bond it in. I need to check back on my photographs. I can't remember whether I had the pond filled and checked before I put the cappings on. I saw James the Koi Whisperer saying he wasn't putting these in place to be sure his window wasn't leaking, and it's the right thing absolutely to do. I can't remember now if I did that. I need to look back at my photographs. I've a recollection I got these done before I filled the pond up, but I'll check. But what happened was, and it does happen here, this can be completely soaked, it can dry up. The same with here. I put my hand on it, it's damp, but it's not hugely wet. When I did soak up the bit of water with the kitchen roll, here dried up. Then we got rain and so forth, and it's kind of back again. That has dried up a bit again today. So I just feel that with the fiberglass coming up over here and the flow coat, when water goes down the back here, whether it's rain or dew or the fish, and you can see even on the window there, the fish, you don't notice it unless you look hard, but they do put the water over, it runs down. And I think what's happening is the water sits here and there's nowhere for it to go. It can't soak away, so it tends to run out down this way for some reason, more so than down that end. If anyone has a window and has a similar problem, I'd be glad to hear. There's a stain there, that's not wet, that's just when it rains, that's where most of the water tends to run out, and it's a stain there rather than being damp. So you know, I'd feel if there was a leak there, it would be constant, that would never dry up, and I probably get water, you know, coming up here and over the stones if it was a constant leak. As well as that, because, you know, you think, well, if you raise the level here, is there anything happening here? Well, I can get tissue in behind there and see in behind there on both sides. There's definitely no moisture right down here. So right down the sides on both sides, there's no moisture. It's only down the bottom. So it's a puzzling one, and it's, but when we were doing the filter, a friend of mine was out helping me with the plumbing, and the wall was wet the couple of days we started, so we said, right, the water level has dropped to do the filter. What we'll do is we'll drop the level further, get in wellies and reseal the bottom of the window. One of the things that I did, which a couple of people have said to me wasn't a great idea, I used plastic shims, which you can get in screw fix just to level the window. They're just plastic. I don't have one to hand. I might have one in here. Hold on, I'll go in here and see if I have them. But they're used basically when you put the window in place, is to get it absolutely level. No, I don't have one here. Thought I did. Oh, I do. Sorry, there's two of them there, but they come in different colours and they're different thicknesses. And the idea is that they support the window. You get the window level. You know, when you do your fiberglass over the frame or the insulation, however where you're going to mount your window, it's never perfectly level, so you're going to need to use a shim. What I did was I put the shims in, leveled it, and then I siliconed over the shims. And a few people have said to me, no, you shouldn't have done that. You should have left the shims open and then leave it for a few days to dry. And once it's fully cured, the window weight is supported by the sealant, and you can remove the shims and then just fill the hole. And I didn't do that, so I'm wondering if there's a hole there. No evidence of it, to be honest. But anyway, so maybe again during the summer, I've said I need to do something with my back bottom drain. I think it's a bit of crap in there that needs to be cleaned out. It's a minor annoyance, but definitely the fish throwing water, and you can see over the top when they're eating or looking for food, is definitely a factor. So the other thing I wanted to talk about then was winter covers. Sorry to bring just thinking to bring the subject of winter in. I mean, it's now what is it, the 20th of September, so in 5 weeks or so we're going to be at 5 o'clock darkness, and it'll be a fair bit cooler. What I was initially planning to do was get 16mm multi-wall polycarbonate, screwing it onto, you know, get sheets maybe about 2 meters wide, screw it onto lats that would go across. The lats would sit on top here and suspend the polycarbonate down into the pond in between the copings. I did a bit of measuring, and as you would probably guess, when you measure between copings here, here and at the back, you end up with nearly a centimetre or so in difference. Nothing is ever completely square. So as well as that, I'd be worried with the 16mm polycarbonate. I don't have a lot of space between the top of the copings and the water. Just be concerned that there mightn't be enough room for gas exchange. So I think I'm back to mounting the frames, and they'd have to be frames because it's too big a span to just mount polycarbonate on its own. It would sag in the middle, and the other thing is as well, it would blow away unless it was really seriously weighed down. So probably building frames of some description and screwing the polycarbonate into it or onto it, and just having it sit on top. Been given the waterfall. It's been working well actually, the waterfall from last week's videos. I just look at the back of it there, and it seems to be looking more bowed to me than it did last week. Hopefully not, maybe not. Just imagine that it is bowed, but we know. But it has been working fine. It looks good from the front, and that will do me for the moment. Thinking about the back part of the pond, I won't use it for the winter. I mean, I know this media I have in here will die off, but I'm not going to be feeding anyway, so it's going to die off. So I'll just leave it and let it mature again for the summer. May even just completely dry out this part. I'll probably do a polycarbonate cover for here anyway, just to match and to keep this clean during the winter. But I won't use the waterfall because I think I'd have to encase it some way in the covers, because you know the wind chill on the water falling over that would be significant, and you know, taking warm water from the top of the bottom of the pond, warm water, not as cold water from the bottom of the pond, and throwing it over the top is not a great idea. So I will turn it off, and just turn off the pump at the back as well, obviously, and have the one at the front turning over. So that's it. If you have any ideas or suggestions for winter covers or what I could do, I mean, the simplest thing to do is just buy treated wood, make a rectangular frame, and you know, with brackets, and just screw the polycarbonate into the top of it. And I know they'll be big if I do two, like it's sort of 4 meters long and 3 or so meters wide. They will be big, but you know, and it'd take 2 people to lift them, but we'd manage. And I do have the back of the garage, so I'm not short of space to store them. I know other people will be thinking, shit, they're ugly looking things, and where do I store them? So that is likely the way I will go. And you know, Jesus, they're not cheap. I know Steve Wainwright was saying he's decided not to bother doing his this year, which I considered as well, but I think I'll go ahead and do it. We're actually having second thoughts on the pergola. I was saying we were going to pull the trigger on that in October, and we may leave that till the spring now. I think we're just looking at a few other priorities, and it's a lot of money, and we're not really going to get the use out of it. Obviously over the winter it does have the advantage of keeping the pond maybe that little bit less weathered, but you know, I think we'll just put the priority on the covers and get them on, and maybe worry about the pergola next year. So that's it. Grass is coming on, by the way, just on the garden. It looks much better from this angle. There's still a few bald spots. The next job tonight is to go round and reseed, but I did give it a couple of cuts. Not as flat as it looks either, but I presume that with 2 dogs it's going to get fairly rough treatment anyway. So I did a bit of fertilizer on it yesterday and cut it, and it looks, I mean, consider there was nothing there 4 weeks ago. It's not bad. I did spray this grass. Of course, when you go around with grass seed, it doesn't quite stay where you want it to do, and some of it went into the stones, and of course it would be grown. If you wanted it to grow there, it wouldn't, but it is grown there. I did spray it, put a sheet of wood down to stop it going onto the lawn, and sprayed it, but it's taken its time. So that's it. Quick update. If you have any comments, let me know, particularly on the winter covers. As I say, I need to have them in place definitely, sort of, you know, by the end of October. It's hard to believe that in a month's time the weather will have changed fairly significantly, but likely that it will. So anyway, stay safe, and talk to you later. Cheers.